Yeah.
So there are principles to life design. Is it easy enough to kind of get into what those principles are?
So we already talked about the first one a little bit. Principle number one is you are at the center of your life. Now, people tend to have a little bit of a kickback on this one. They say, no, but I have a spouse, and I have kids, and I have family and friends, and etc. That's great, but they all have their own lives.
Right.
And what we find is that people tend to live and make decisions that might make other people happy, and they forget that ultimately it is their life that they're living.
Yeah.
So if everyone made decisions to make themselves live into their true potential, we would all be in a lot better of a position. So number one, you are at the center of your life.
Okay.
Number two, and this is a tough one, we practice radical responsibility.
Yes.
Radical responsibility means taking 100% responsibility for 100% of the situations you find yourself in.
Yes, I love that.
That's hard because responsibility doesn't mean fault. It doesn't mean blame. Those are backward-looking emotions. We aren't saying that we're at fault or to blame for what put us here, but we are saying, this is my life and here I am, and what I choose to do with the circumstances that I'm in going forward, that's my responsibility.
Yes.
And those are decisions that I get to make. So even if someone else does something to you that puts you in a terrible situation, you still get to decide how you're gonna move forward and take responsibility for that. And that is a level of control and just a level of agency that you don't get if you're just letting things happen to you by default.
A lot of times we forget that we are in control of every decision we make.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now we can't always necessarily control the outcome, but we're in control of the decision we make. I know the third one, which I love, is be completely honest with yourself.
If to no one else.
If to no one else, be completely honest with yourself.
Yeah.
I think I know what that means, but what does that mean to you?
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have a hard time admitting even to ourselves that something isn't working, or that I don't enjoy this, or I don't want to be in this position anymore.
Or I have to do this because. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's that clause at the beginning, if to no one else. It's important because in the age of social media, we feel like we need to tell everybody our decision making and justify everything and put everything out there. You don't owe that to anyone else. Principle number one, this is your life.
Yep.
But you can keep that level of honesty with yourself that allows you to say, you know what? This situation isn't working for me, because you can't design your way out of a situation that you're not willing to even see clearly.
Yep.
So that level of honesty is absolutely critical.
So number 4, you're always choosing. What does that mean?
You are always choosing. Even when you're not making a choice, you're choosing to stay the same. And that can be okay. The whole idea underneath life design is intention. So you mentioned like live by design, that means something, right? The opposite of that is default. So I'm just gonna allow things to happen to me. Making a deliberate choice, or making the deliberate choice not to make a decision right now.
Right.
At least allow it to be intentional. Allow that to be your decision to say, I'm not ready yet, I'm not gonna make this decision. But know that even in doing that, you've made a decision.
Yeah.
And that we make thousands of them on a daily basis that all compound up to the life experience that we have. And they're important.
And then number 5, your life is a finite gift. You did mention this.
I did.
And I know this is special to you. So what is number 5?
Your life is a finite gift comes from this idea of mortality.
Right.
And it can feel negative at first. But if you really let it sink in and allow it to go to work in your life, it becomes the biggest opportunity. When I was in graduate school, I looked like I was killing it. I was getting my PhD, I was running all these research studies, I was publishing, it was amazing, right? But on the inside, there were all these things that I wanted to do and I wasn't doing them. And I was afraid I was gonna fail, and I was afraid people were gonna judge me, and I was afraid of letting people down. And I sat there one day and I thought about my dad, who had been, he had passed away over a decade prior to that.
Yes.
And I was sitting there thinking, this is gonna be me someday. I'm gonna pass away someday. We all are. Like, that's the one guarantee we have, right? And I thought to myself, what would my dad give for these opportunities that I'm wasting right now? Like, would he come back and would he say, you know what? I also am not gonna run a marathon, even though I want to, because I'm scared I might run too slow. Like, no, he wouldn't. Like, he would come back and live with the fervor and the excitement and the intentionality that we all should be living with. It's just we haven't recognized principle number 5 as deeply as we should. And so I beat this into people all the time because it is the most motivating thing. If you think about these all in their entirety, you're living for you, only you get to have this experience, be honest with yourself, make intentional decisions, and live like your life depends on it. Think about yourself as a human being with needs. What do human beings need to do well? They need to eat, they need to sleep, they need to rest, different than sleep. They need to feed themselves, they need to drink water, they need social interaction, and they need like challenge and meaning and achievement. I would go through systematically in your life and see if you're getting all of those things. Because to support peak performance, you need every one of those cups to be full. What I like to tell people to rely back on is not just this white knuckling trying to achieve your goals, but how do you set up the systems to help you do that?
Tell me a little bit about that link between psychology and performance and why we shouldn't take it for granted.
Oh, totally. It's amazing because when we think about the field of psychology, we tend to think about sort of the clinical side of it. So if I have depression, if I have anxiety, if I have maybe a condition that I need help with, I go to therapy. That's all valid and all incredible. There's a whole side of the field that deals with positive psychology. How do I have peak amazing experiences? How do I perform at a higher level? I'm already doing well, how do I elevate that even further? And that's the side of the field that I think gets overlooked sometimes because it isn't traditionally where we think about the field of psych playing. Now, one example I can give, just a flat out concrete example, and this is from the cognitive stuff that I just love so much, is that let's think about little kids, right? When you're a little kid and you're growing up, your mind at that stage is a sponge. We've all kind of learned that you've had that experience with a teenager and you're like, what were you thinking? Like, what was going through your head when you did that? It's because we've got this whole section of our brain that doesn't turn on until we're like in our mid-20s. And that's the contemplative, thoughtful, deliberative, the reasoning side of our brain doesn't turn on until our mid-20s.
And is that the performance part of our brain?
Yeah, and here's why this is important. When you're a kid, that part of your mind isn't even working yet. So all of the information that's coming into you, you're taking as fact. You don't have the capacity to question it. You don't have the capacity to determine whether you believe it or not. And some of that information that's coming in is information that you're learning about you or people like you. So people, oh my gosh, people like us don't go to places like that. Oh, people like us don't do public speaking. People like us don't go after big goals like that. There are no business people in our family. You learn these messages, and as an adult, you think, oh, I just wouldn't believe those things. But as a child, you don't have that capacity. So over your lifetime, you develop this body of knowledge about yourself that cognitively is your identity. And your mind takes it to be true. Whatever your mind believes to be true, it uses as a filter for the world, as a filter for the decisions you're gonna make, the size of the goals that you're gonna set, how hard you're gonna pursue them, whether you're even gonna put yourself in situations that would help you achieve that goal. So if your identity, this is a very core psychological concept, if your identity doesn't include things like being entrepreneurial and trying and failing and taking risks and being creative and coming up with new ideas and problem solving, probably not gonna be very successful, right? Or you're gonna have to work harder to be. And so psychology comes in some of those core concepts, just even based on what we might even try to do with our lives.